Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Copan, and on behalf of the American Gas Association, I'm honored to be serving as the Executive Director of the 27th World Gas Conference. I will pay Fred later for the tremendous promotional bit that he just did for us. My role today is to serve as the moderator and take you on a 30-minute tour around the world of the tremendous opportunity for U.S. LNG exports. And certainly congratulations to Tom and Susan and Karen. Thank you so much for this. And Fred, thanks for your work. So I essentially will serve as your travel agent, your tour director around the world, if you will, over the next 30 minutes. But before we do so, I'd like to introduce our very distinguished panelists for this quick tour that we're going to take. First, I would like to introduce Minister Arunish Chawla. And Minister Chawla is with the Embassy of India. Thank you. Then I would like to introduce the Counselor for Economic Affairs at the Indonesian Embassy, and that is Bhima Dwipayudhanto. I think I did okay on that, Bhima. I think I got it covered. Then I would like to introduce the First Secretary of the Romanian Embassy, and that is Valentin-Gabriel. Budău. Now I'd like to introduce the country manager for Sub-Saharan Africa at the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, and that's Lisa Coppe. And the last part of our tour around the globe in 30 minutes is Mr. Keith Eischeid, and he is the country manager for Latin America and Caribbean. So let's give all these panelists a round of applause before their presentation. So before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to spend 2 minutes a little bit about the World Gas Conference for those of you that might not be aware. It is the world's largest global gas industry event. It is literally the Olympics of the global gas industry. And it is coming to Washington next June for the first time in the United States in 30 years. The last time it was held in the United States was 1988. It will be decades before the World Gas Conference comes back to the United States. The AGA is the host of the World Gas Conference, and it coincides with the 100th anniversary of the founding of the American Gas Association. The Gas Technology Institute, based in Chicago, the president of the Gas Technology Institute, David Carroll, is currently serving as the president of the International Gas Union, which owns the World Gas Conference. I'm very pleased that we have representatives here from both GTI and the American Gas Association. I'd ask you to raise your hand, who are working diligently on this project with us. From the Gas Technology Institute, Rod Rinholm. From the American Gas Association, Liliana Fanol, Isabel Suarez, and Kevin Hardart. And I'd encourage you to check with any of these folks throughout the morning for any questions you might have. The World Gas Conference will have 10,000 to 12,000 attendees from 100 different countries. There will be 500 speakers on every topic throughout the gas value chain. There is going to be a 40,000 square meter exhibition, which will be the single largest gas industry exhibition ever held in the United States. And it all happens less than 1 mile from here at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. So I encourage you to take a look at the brochure you have, take a look at the exhibition floor plan. Registration is open. We encourage you to register early and register often. If you don't have a stand in the exhibition, we encourage you to take a look at that as well. And many thanks to all of our sponsors and exhibitors, many of whose names are on the board behind us. So, given that commercial, I'd like to now turn to our panel. And I'd like to first turn to Minister Chawla from India. Now, I mentioned David Carroll as president of IGU. On October 10th, he was visiting with Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi. And there's tremendous opportunity for natural gas in India. We have got the Honorable, His Excellency Minister Pradhan is one of the keynote speakers at the World Gas Conference. GAIL, Petronet, and Indian Oil are all very involved in the World Gas Conference. So in looking at South Asia, Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, These appear to be very strong emerging markets. Can you give us your thoughts on the opportunities and challenges for U.S. LNG in that part of the world, in South Asia?
Thank you. Jay used his 5 minutes well, and so would I. South Asia is going to be one of the fastest growing regions in the world over the next 2 decades. India was the fastest growing economy last year, and after the structural reforms like GST are done, it would soon acquire that mantle again, and it's going to be like this for the next 10 years. This has a huge implication for the energy sector. At this stage of development, the energy GDP elasticity is very close to 1. It will come down, but that means a huge energy demand in all sectors. I happen to serve as the member secretary of the low carbon expert group set up by the government of India, in which the US partners, particularly on the technical side, offered great help. It was a successful endeavor which became integral part of India's energy policy. What emerges from that is that natural gas has a huge role going forward. And we take climate change seriously. And going forward, there is typically a lot of focus on, let's say, solar energy, wind energy, bioenergy. But what is often missed out is that if you take the life cycle footprint of any energy source, natural gas happens to be one of the cleanest. And what has happened over the last decade has completely changed the energy and economic dynamics going forward. This is an opportunity we should not miss. We understand the United States is worried about the trade deficits. We have a very simple answer. Go back to comparative advantage. And this is comparative advantage. With this in mind, we set up big initiatives in the last 1 year, and that is in the oil and the gas sector with the United States. And a lot of our friends who work together I'm happy to see them all in the hall here. Please remember us, we sit next to the Gandhi statue on the Massachusetts Avenue. We have a lot to do together. Quickly recounting the important developments in last 1 year which are path-breaking. One, we started importing American oil. And the Indian companies have imported American oils in 2016, 3 very big consignments. And very easily, this can top to a $1 billion export from US to India every year. What is coming is even bigger. The oil exports are growing, the gas exports are going to grow exponentially. The Cove Point terminal, as was pointed out, is nearly set up. The Gas Authority has entered into a long-term 20-year contract. And similarly, you are setting up facilities in Louisiana, where again, the Gas Authority has entered into long-term contracts. We are still working on the economics to make it work, and we'll need some innovation and help from your experts on that. But if we can do this, in next year itself, this is going to be a $1 billion export, and it's going to grow. And this is a huge opportunity, given the changes in the policy framework which the Modi government has brought about in India. Over the last 3 years, we've rapidly liberalized our oil and gas markets. We've allowed competitive pricing. We now have a fairly open and harmonized exploration and licensing regime in which a lot of American investors are investing. But more important, I think this is a great thought. It's a great opportunity. a gas infrastructure has what is typically called a natural monopoly, and which means in emerging markets where resources are scarce and infrastructure investment demands are very high, the public sector takes the first lead. So the smartest thing to do is what? To set up body corporates in the public sector, which are owned by the public sector, sponsored by them. And in India, in this sector, it's called the Gas Authority. Then there are private players coming in because the gas pricing is being liberalized. So that is a huge opportunity. But even then, to start with, the private sector would find it very difficult to create a business case. So just a few months before being sent on this assignment, we were caught with a very important initiative where a gas pipeline infrastructure was to be laid out in the heartland of the Indian subcontinent. And there, for the first time, we had to take a difficult decision to support Gas Authority with a seed money from the budget for it to lay out that infrastructure, to lay out city gas in some of the big cities, and start rolling a business model. As this rolls out, the opportunities for public-private partnerships will open up. We first tried public-private partnerships for 3-4 years. It was difficult to start with because the product market reforms hadn't taken place, the framework wasn't there, the economic model would not work. So finally, this has kick-started the work. And they're working with your American companies. USTDA has a great opportunity and a great role to perform there. And Indian cities are growing. Indian infrastructure is growing. The present government is spending on infrastructure at a rate which is growing 20% year on year for the last 3 years. So friends, please remember Gandhi Statue, Massachusetts Avenue, we are there.
Good. Thank you very much, Minister Chawla, for the excellent remarks. Certainly a country with 1 billion people and a lot of air quality issues. Natural gas has a tremendous role to play there, and look forward to working with you. Next, I'd like to turn over to Councillor Bhima Dwipayudhanto from the Indonesian Embassy. Very pleased that His Excellency Minister Jonan is one of the keynote speakers at the World Gas Conference, and also very pleased that Pertamina, Petronas, and other Southeast Asian companies are very involved with us on WGC. So, Councillor, the floor is yours. I'm sorry. The question is, so Indonesia is a major oil and gas producer and an LNG exporter, but your nation is predicted to need LNG imports in the future. Can you help us with that? And at the same time, I think if you can give us a sense that given the vastness of the Indonesian archipelago, 17,000 islands spread over 735,000 square miles, with much of the population living in just a few islands, what are the unique opportunities and challenges for LNG in Indonesia? Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for the opportunity. It's a distinct pleasure for me to be here on behalf of the Indonesian Embassy. I think with regard to your question, it is true that Indonesia is one of the largest exporters of LNG at the moment. In fact, we have third largest gas reserves in the Asia Pacific, just right after Australia and China. And in terms of exporting LNG, we are behind Qatar, Malaysia, and Australia. And we account for 1.5% of global gas reserves. And fun fact is that we have been producing oil for almost 100 years, back to the date, the end of 1800s, where the Dutch used Indonesia's resources to extract oil and gas, oil in this sense. But as a matter of fact, we use, although we are exporting a lot of the LNG abroad, we do have the need to accommodate the expansion of economy. And in this sense, there is a need for us to get around because we have been are committed to exporting to 2035. And there's an increase, 10% increase each year for the demand of LNG. We need to be able to get around that fact by trying to accommodate the supply gap with through imports. Even though we have large reserves, the issue with our side is that we are facing issues with regard to exploration and the production of LNG. And it is in part as a cause of the limited infrastructure facilities, and of course the distribution networks, which complicates this development. And I've been hearing the remarks from various speakers before, and we are really excited to note that like the USTDA, it can provide assistance in the technological assistance, and most of our LNG reserves are offshore. That creates problems. But this is an opportunity for U.S. companies who are at the leading edge of that sort of technology. This is a technology that we need, and like rightly said, we, in terms of logistics, it's a nightmare to able to have that sort of connectivity in 17,000 islands, although we are only living on 100 few of them. But however, with regard to our current president's vision of having Indonesia become a global maritime fulcrum, infrastructure is a must. We are building infrastructure which relates to toll roads, seaports, and even for energy. And in this case, we see the huge potential that we can invite foreign investors to take part in that initiative. I think Indonesia, with its current GDP, although behind India and the US, we are getting there. We are expanding, and it's a very lucrative market, and there's a lot of room to play. We know that that is the opportunities that we can provide, but however, we also note the challenges. We are doing our utmost, I think, to make it easier for investors to set up their operations in Indonesia. We note the red tape. We are trying to provide incentives and so forth. And we are willing to work with the US in this regard, so that hopefully we can have this sort of mutual benefit in the long run. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bhima. Certainly tremendous opportunity in Indonesia. Okay, so our tour went from South Asia to Southeast Asia, and now we're going to move west and head into Southeastern Europe, and we have Valentin-Budău from the Romanian embassy. Obviously, I learned that Romania had the first natural gas light pole in all of Europe back in the early 1900s. Romania has tremendous gas reserves. We're very pleased that we have the EU Energy Minister Šefčovič, who is confirmed to speak at the World Gas Conference. And everybody's very aware. You've heard today a lot about Poland and Lithuania, what's happening in Northern Europe, North Central Europe. But I think one of the true opportunities is in Southeastern Europe. So I think, Valentin, if you could help us and describe how you need new LNG, new gas infrastructure, and what you see are the opportunities for U.S. LNG in your part of Europe there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jay. I wanted to start by thanking our hosts and the organizers for the opportunity to speak here, and I wanted to acknowledge USTDA for the great work that they've been doing throughout the years in Romania and in the region, and I think this event shows clearly that they will continue to do so. And I just wanted to give thanks and to express our gratitude for a particular individual sitting in this room and actually speaking at the next panel from his position of Special Envoy for Energy Affairs at the State Department. Amos Hochstein worked tirelessly to promote energy security in Europe. He was also the co-chair on the US side of the Energy Working Group as part of the bilateral task force for strategic partnership between Romania and the US. So for all of that and all the good work that you've been doing, thank you very much, Amos. And now to go to Southeast Europe, which is a region that comprises both EU and non-EU member states. I will separate the needs on two categories. And I will speak in terms of hardware and software. In terms of hardware, the region needs new access points, and there are talks about the LNG terminals in northern Greece and Croatia, and then the Romanian offshore gas. These, of course, need interconnectors. They also need pressure stations, deposit facilities, and so on. And also there is space for new production capacities. And I just wanted to mention that General Electric has just launched a project in partnership with Romania this year. They will provide core technology and full package of equipment for a combined cycle power plant in Romania. So this is the GE participation. A Romanian gas company will invest 268 million euros in that facility. And that's the largest public program in Romania in the last 20 years and gas project in the region in the last 5 years. Now, when it comes to software, we are dealing with what constitutes a business-friendly environment. And there are challenges in the region. Unaligned licensing regimes, distorted gas transmission tariffs, lack of competition for access to retail customers. All I'm saying are the prerequisites for an integrated regional energy market. And this is what we are striving to achieve in the region. So I'm going to give you a quick note of what Romania is doing to alleviate the problems. On the hardware side, we are speeding up and increasing the investments in interconnectors. BRUA pipeline, which stands, the initials are for the interconnector Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Austria. We are paying to build over 500 kilometers long new pipeline, reverse flow that will connect the countries in the region and also reach the seashore and get to the offshore facilities operated by US companies. So basically there are US companies producing gas offshore and they will bring it onshore, and hopefully with this pipeline it will go throughout the region. And USTDA offered a grant for a study 2 years ago for part of this project. So thank you. We are also finishing the interconnector with the Republic of Moldova. Again, a gas interconnector to diversify the gas supply to Moldova. On the software side, our main objective is to streamline a list of projects of common interest, as they are called in Europe, and to prioritize them and get them done. In September 28th, Bucharest hosted a ministerial energy ministers summit, CSEC format, that stands for Central and Southeastern Europe Connectivity. And the main purpose of that format is exactly this: to streamline the list of projects, of strategic projects, regional projects that need to be done, and put all the energies and the investment and the efforts into finalizing them. And I just wanted to make a quick note to the 3Cs initiative. President Trump was earlier, a couple of months ago, in Warsaw just to address the partner countries in this initiative. And next year, Bucharest will host the next summit. And alongside the high-level summit, there will be a business forum. And the 3 Cs initiative concentrates on energy, transport, and information society. So there's another avenue for that. On the US, that was the second question.
Yeah, what are your views on the opportunity for US LNG in the region?
Yes, so everything I've just mentioned has been addressed before by me, by others, by officials in the region, and that gives the frustration. We basically know what needs to be done, but somehow we fail to get this through. And this is where the US comes in on all these aspects. First of all, on getting the projects done and overcoming the certain difficulties and roadblocks and so on and so forth. And the US administration can be pretty convincing when they want to, and when they offer their full political support, things can move a lot faster. And besides that, there are, I've mentioned all the needs in the region, and there is space for US companies to be involved. There are US companies already operating in Romania. Would love to see them throughout the Balkans and the wider region on all aspects related to gas production. I've mentioned interconnectors, I mentioned production facilities. There are mature deposits and mature fields, and there are US companies operating in Romania right now. So there is still space for participation. And I just wanted to make a quick note to technology. I've already mentioned what GE is doing in Romania, but look, US is still a country that has cutting-edge technology and innovative technology on all matters of energy production, on all energy sectors, be it clean coal, carbon capture and sequestration, nuclear technology, smart grids, cyber solutions. On all of these, we in the region need US involvement and participation, and I think USTDA can partner with the private sector to bring this to the region. So on this happy note, I conclude.
Thank you very much, Valentin. Great opportunities in Southeastern Europe. Okay, so we will continue our tour heading south, and we will move to Sub-Saharan Africa, where Lisa Coppe is the USTDA specialist for Sub-Saharan Africa. Very pleased that we have Mr. Omar Mita, the CEO of E&H in Mozambique, as one of our keynote speakers at the World Gas Conference. We've got E&I and Anna Darko very involved, as well as Paul Eardley-Taylor of Standard Bank in Africa is very involved with us as well. So Lisa, there's over 600 million people in Africa without electricity. Maybe if you can give us some sense of the opportunities that LNG can play in the region, the opportunities, challenges for US LNG, the role of LNG to power and things like that. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think a lot of the challenges and opportunities that my fellow panelists have mentioned also range true in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I'd say one of the current challenges is that it's a buyer's market. And a lot of Sub-Saharan Africa markets are developing significant gas resources. So that would be like Mauritania, Senegal, Ghana, South Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, just to name a few. And so I do think the challenges also always represent an opportunity for US industry that I would say US industry is already capitalizing on to really bridge the gap. Sub-Saharan African markets really, I would say, are looking to the US because we have revolutionized the gas sector. And so I think there is a lot of opportunities for US industry to come in and really bridge that gap. And for a lot of these markets, they're really nascent. So Senegal, for example, is developing its gas really for the first time. Most of their power plants are run on heavy fuel oil, and they really need to start from this base. And so they can turn to the US for US solutions to bridge that gap. And that's why I'm really pleased that we're actually organizing a reverse trade mission to bring over officials from the Senegalese market, but also buyers, to really talk to US industry as to how to basically create this foundation and this base to bring gas to market in Senegal, but also to the region in West Africa. You're absolutely right. I think the estimate is about 2/3 of Sub-Saharan Africans don't have access to electricity. And this is something that the USTDA, Power Africa, other US government partners, along with US industry, are really trying to tackle with with Sub-Saharan African governments, with Sub-Saharan African private sector. And I think real strides have been made. You know, a lot of these markets really used to rely on baseload power that was really hydro, which isn't particularly sustainable. So the Ghanaian market, for example, Volta River Authority, their power generation company, was really run on hydro, but when you have droughts, it's not sustainable. And so markets like Ghana are really working to bring in gas as a reliable, flexible, baseload source of power. And so that represents significant opportunity for U.S. LNG exporters to come into these markets, as a lot of these markets are talking about bringing in new gas to provide power. Because there is such a huge gap, and you mentioned 600 million Africans without electricity, you know, this is a huge opportunity, not just to, you know, focus on bringing in gas, but also focusing on, you know, that midstream infrastructure to bring gas to market. And so, you know, we've done this in a lot of Sub-Saharan African markets. We're looking to do more of this. For example, in Nigeria, we worked on a 280-mile gas pipeline, really, you know, funding the development and the front-end engineering design to make that, you know, move forward, make that project move forward. And in addition, you know, there's markets like South Africa has relatively little gas-fired power currently, but is looking to really vamp that up. They have this gas-to-power program where they're looking to bring 3,000 megawatts of gas-fired power on board. And so, you know, we're at USTDA, we're actually funding a study to look at the Western Cape region to bring, to look at how can LNG be brought into the market? How can that be utilized for power to really meet these goals that are the goals of South Africa? And I'm sure a lot of you know that Secretary Perry was recently in South Africa for Oil Week and spoke about, you know, how you know, we're partners, and there is this opportunity for partnership between the U.S. and our Sub-Saharan Africa partners to really meet these goals, which are our African partners' goals, to have this reliable, sustainable, cheaper baseload power. And so I think U.S. companies are really poised to come into the market and make that happen. And since I work at USTDA, it's worth noting that, you know, we have a lot of tools that can help make that happen. So as you have ideas on the U.S. industry side of, you know, opportunities where we could come in and support you to fill this gap, to prep projects, to make them happen, to make them move forward, and to really realize that, you know, we can be your tool to help fill that gap and to bring in U.S. industry, you know, particularly where these African markets really need it.
Thanks, Lisa. Just a great opportunity to help energize Africa, and I think that's important to all of us in the room. All right, so our tour is going to move west now as we head over towards the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Americas. Keith Eischeid is the TDA person handling Latin America and the Caribbean there. We were just last week at a natural gas trilateral summit in Mexico with the Mexican Gas Association, the American Gas Association, and the Canadian Gas Association. First time that's ever been done. We've invited the ministers of Mexico, Canada, and Argentina all to speak at the World Gas Conference. We've got Ambassador Pascual is one of the moderators. I'm very pleased that Ambassador Dr. Neil Parson is here today, and he is the head of our Global Ambassadors Network. Neil's back there, former ambassador from Trinidad. We've also got President Moreno as one of the speakers at the World Gas Conference. So it's clearly that region is important to us at the World Gas Conference. And I'd like to get your thoughts on a couple of things, Keith. First of all, there are a number of producers in the region, whether it's shale or otherwise. What impact do you see that having on U.S. LNG exports there? And then a lot of the LNG is used to supplement fuel oil, et cetera. And I'd like to get your thoughts on the opportunities and challenges for LNG throughout the Americas, whether it's Canada, U.S., Mexico, Central America, Caribbean, Latin America.
Great, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and finalize our world tour in this hemisphere. And thank you for the opportunity. We at USTDA have worked in a lot of these markets. We see this as a great opportunity to partner with both public and private sector project sponsors in the region on gas infrastructure. And through this initiative that we announced today, we're looking for additional opportunities. We've really worked throughout the region, and from Argentina to Mexico, and in between, Brazil, Trinidad, Colombia, and other places, Panama. We're very excited with the opportunities that exist. In terms of the markets, they're quite varied. There's a lot of opportunities throughout. It's important to note at the top that the U.S. exports of LNG and natural gas to the region are extremely important in terms of our trade. You may know that at least 40% of U.S. natural gas and LNG goes to the region, the vast majority going to Mexico. And so Mexico is a major importer, and it's the #1 market for U.S. gas at this point. So U.S. companies have been able to partner and develop that market as well so that Mexico can bring more gas-fired power online, which is a big push on the Mexican government's part. They also have resources there in Mexico and elsewhere. You're also talking about Argentina and the Vaca Muerta shale reserve. There are reserves in other places, in Brazil and throughout the region, of course, in the Caribbean as well. In terms of the opportunities there, I mean, Mexico is also going under an energy reform that'll increase more private sector participation and investment. And I think in the short term, as we look at the region, even though there might be some more gas plays coming online in the medium term, in the short term, there are strong opportunities for U.S. companies to grow their business in Latin America. The U.S. is already exporting the gas via pipeline or via shipments. We have competitive prices for power generation. And, the reports that there are projections that natural gas will be about 30% of the energy matrix in the region. So with that growth, we obviously see that there'll be higher demand. So there are obviously going to be opportunities for suppliers throughout the region to do that, and of course from the United States. An important development that's been happening, of course, as people know, is the expansion of the Panama Canal. And now U.S. LNG can pass through the canal on its way to Asia and the west coast of South America. And so, as you saw in 2016, so last year we had our first exports of LNG to Argentina, to Chile, and other markets. So there's definitely a growth there. We see a lot of opportunities there. In terms of the opportunities, yes, there's increased gas export potential. We're looking to partner with the region. The regional partners are looking to develop critical gas infrastructure, like gas storage facilities and gas-fired power plants. As the region, a lot of areas, as I mentioned in Mexico, they're conversion of fuel oil or thermal power to gas-fired power. And that's a massive shift in the energy matrix generation mix in Latin America. In terms of potential challenges that we've heard about in the region, it really is to expand the gas infrastructure. I mean, the shipments are starting, but you also need the pipelines. You need the terminals. You need the distribution. And then with that, you also, as you do the gas-fired gas generation, you need to make your more reliable and robust electricity grid, so you can transmit and distribute that energy throughout the country and the region. The countries are also looking to adapt and update their regulatory framework to the current realities. This is a massive shift. And so the countries are also looking to see how they can take more advantage of gas and its great benefits throughout the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Well, I think that gives you a good, quick overview of the tour that we took from South Asia to Southeast Asia to Southeast Europe to Sub-Saharan Africa to Latin America and the Caribbean. I think thank you to all the panelists for a great job. How about joining me in a round of applause for all the panelists?